Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 160, and today's date is 9/11/2013. And the title of this episode is War or Not to... What was the question? And before I get started, I just want to give my condolences to all those families that lost someone during 9/11. I myself was down in Manhattan at the time, and it was just a horrible thing to see thousands of people running up 3rd Avenue in Manhattan, hearing people screaming. I went to the roof of my building, saw jets flying around, and all I saw was smoke, the white smoke that you see. And again, for all those families who have suffered during this, my condolences to all of you. And let's get into the economic collapse news. And we see that Trader Joe's is dropping their health coverage. Now, we've seen this with many different retail stores. We see it with Forever 21. We saw it with UPS is also saying that they're going to drop coverage. IBM is making the move to do this also. And there was a memo that came out that said that Trader Joe's will stop offering health insurance to part-time employees, saying that it will be more cost-effective for them to acquire it through Obamacare exchanges. And again, this is supposed to be something where it is good for businesses and good for the people. And we're finding out that Obamacare is not good for anyone. The only people it's good for are the insurance companies, and to collect taxes from people who, first of all, can't afford it or don't want it, and businesses and people are trying to get out of doing anything that has to do with Obamacare. So again, if the government is going to pass something for the people, then it has to be really for the people. You shouldn't be forced to take something. There shouldn't be penalties if you don't take something. Now, we are seeing, we all know that the economy at this point is not what it seems. I know the government is out there and they're telling everyone it's getting better. Unemployment's going down, housing's doing fantastic, retail's doing great, but we're seeing other things. Citigroup, they're laying off 2,200 people. BlackBerry not doing well as a company. They're laying off salespeople. And I can't even remember the last time I heard a company actually lay off salespeople, because that is your bread and butter of the entire company. But again, they are cutting workers because their phone technology and their company is not doing well. It's kind of hurting. There was a report out there about U.S. retailers dwindling is a signal of an economic slowdown. Now, I've been saying this for quite a while, that we've been looking at retail. Retail stores are closing. They're closing a lot of stores. Walmart, Macy's, Nordstrom's, Costco, Target, you name it, all the big stores are saying that sales are slowing down. Now, they're using other reasons of why they're slowing down, but we know what's happening here. And this report goes on to say, when retailers in the U.S. economy warn about their sales being in a slump or start to forecast rough roads ahead, it should be a warning to investors of an economic slowdown ahead. Retailers in the U.S. economy show trends about consumer spending. If retailers are worried, it means consumer spending is in trouble. And we've seen this. And listen, I shop in Costco. I shop in different stores. And most of these places, I see people purchasing the basics. Food. I'm in Costco. I remember there was a time that I used to go to Costco and I saw TV sets in the cart, stereos in the cart, cameras in the cart, DVD players in the cart. I go there, and I was there today actually, and what I see there is everyone with food buying in bulk. That's what I see. And this goes on to say, in the very recent past, we have heard from retailers like Walmart, Macy's, about how they're struggling with their sales. And that's a problem when you have both low-end and high-end retailers facing similar customer demand issues. And we're seeing this throughout the economy. I mean, I'll repeat this, and I've said this so many times already. The amount of retail stores that are closing, Best Buy, Radio Shack, Barnes & Noble, we know Borders completely gone, J.C. Penney, huge trouble, and GameStop, they're closing, from putting them all together, thousands of stores, which means thousands of stores closed, which means hundreds of people unemployed. More people that are unemployed leads to more people not spending their money in retail. And again, the unemployment is not 7.3%. If we go back prior to 1994, and if you go to shadowstats.com, you can see the real unemployment numbers. It's around 23, approaching 24%. And we see a lot of people that are underemployed. And when you're underemployed, I'm going to tell you right now, you are just scraping by. You are paying your rent or your mortgage if you can at that. You are just barely affording food and what other expenses you have. People start defaulting on their credit cards, and there's no way that you're going out and spending more money on things you really don't need. And when that happens, it hurts retail. Now, I talk about real estate quite a bit, and, the higher rates are, making it so mortgage applications are continually declining. And I've said this over and over. This is nothing new. And again, every area is not going to be the same. Just because mortgage applications are declining right now, people don't see the sales declining. In some areas you do. There's always a lag, and the sales right now are starting to catch up to the mortgage plunge in applications. And we're seeing that sales are starting to take effect in certain areas. In some areas, it hasn't hit yet. And I used examples in my other reports where when I lived in New York and I had a sister-in-law in Florida, she's still in Florida, and she's a realtor, and I said, wow, New York is really hit hard. When, I put my house up for sale and nobody's coming. It's very strange. Realtors have no clue what's going on. In Florida, she's saying, I don't understand that. Here we're booming. It makes no sense. But again, 6 months later, all of a sudden Florida was hit and other places around the country were hit. And we're seeing the same thing happening right now. It's a lag in sales, and there are certain areas that are still doing well, but eventually this will be a snowball effect, and it will affect all the areas. And I keep saying, if everything is okay, why is the Fed still printing $85 billion a month and buying up this toxic real estate and purchasing treasury bonds? It makes no sense if everything's fine. And now they're saying, well, we're going to taper because everything is fine. And we know for a fact there is no way they can do this. They've done their litmus test, and they wanted to see what would happen. The markets fell. The same thing's going to happen this fall, early winter, but they're going to cover it up with other events, so they are not to blame. Now, there's another good indicator that something is wrong with the economy. The food stamp usage is increasing dramatically. And, if everyone's back to work and everyone's working and making a great income and it's, 7.3%, we would see less people using and applying for food stamps. Now, I took a little snapshot here from 1981 to 2007. The food stamp participants were always between 22 and 25 million. And that basically is the poverty of those people that consistently stayed on food stamps. But in 2009, after we had the crash of 2008, we saw food stamps participants rise to 35 million. Now, unemployment at that point was at like 10% or so. And let's go from 2009 to 2013. Now, we've seen the unemployment go from 10% that they were reporting with their manipulated numbers down to 7.3. Now, wouldn't you think if the unemployment numbers are getting better and people are going back to work and the economy's doing well, people buying homes all over the place, the car industry doing much, much better because we opened it up to subprime borrowers now. I mean, nobody really looks at it that way, but they're saying that the car industry is doing very well. Now, people buying cars, people buying houses, unemployment coming down. Why did the food stamp participation rate go from 35 million in 2009 to 47 million in 2013? And the graph is still pointing up and going higher. And we can expect in 2014 that this 47 million number is probably going to hit around 52 million. So to me, something's wrong. It doesn't make sense. And talking about things that don't make sense, we know we have a debt ceiling debate coming up. It's coming up very soon. And let me just say, the last 14 times that they had this debate about the debt ceiling, what did they do? They took the debt ceiling and they rose it to the next level. This will be the 15th time. They're going to put on a huge show. They're going to tell you that people are going to suffer if we do this. We're going to have to cut things, and they're going to make this big, big theatrical show for everyone to see, and they're going to debate the last minute, and they're going to make it seem like, oh my God, this is a tough one, this is a tough one. But they know this is coming. This is nothing new to them. They cannot stop borrowing. It's impossible. Actually, they're going to increase the amount that they borrow because the revenue that they're bringing in is dwindling. Because the real unemployment number, and this goes to people who are paying taxes, and we're going to have to use a little common sense here, and this is difficult for some, easier for others. The unemployment, when people are telling us that it's moving down to 7.3, they are including people who have part-time work. When you're doing part-time work, the amount of money that you're bringing in is less, so you're paying less taxes, even though it shows 7.3. People who fell off of the unemployment, they're not counting, so it's 7.3. So we have people who've fallen off who are not looking anymore, so they're not counted in these numbers. People who have taken part-time jobs who are earning less money, who are giving less into who are paying into taxes, which means less revenue to the government. Less revenue means less money is going to pay off the debt into all these programs. They're going to raise the debt ceiling because they need to borrow more money. Borrowing more money means more debt, which means more interest payments on the debt. But revenue is not going up. It's going down. So they will not have enough money to cover the difference that they're bringing in and the amount that they're borrowing. So they're going to have to borrow more to cover that difference. And this is what happened to Greece. This is what's happening to Cyprus. It's happening to Italy, to France. The only difference here is that the United States has a printing press, and they can continually print. But again, as the debt continually grows and there's not enough people to cover it, who's buying these treasury bonds? The same people that are printing the money, because no other nation wants them. Actually, nations are starting to sell them. to get rid of them. And if there's a seller, there needs to be a buyer. And if no other foreign nation wants them, guess who has to purchase them? The Fed. That's why they're over $2 trillion on their books right now. And what's going to happen as the economy collapses or this war begins and countries start to take sides and China takes a side, which will be on the Syrian side, Russia takes a side, they're going to start dumping their treasury bonds. The economy will start to collapse, yields will go up, the Fed will have to figure out what they're going to do, and they don't want to be blamed for any type of collapse, neither does the government. They will have to create some event to cover this entire thing up. And they'll blame it on another country, they'll blame it on war, and they'll have to increase this fall and early winter the amount of QE to cover the shortfalls of everything that's going on. But again, they will spin this to make believe that they are actually helping the situation, which they are not. Now, I've talked about how this economy compares to the Great Depression and prior to. I did this early on. I think it was episode 6 through 9 or 6 through 8. And right now there was an article that said the last time the top 10% of the U.S. income distribution has such a large portion of the entire nation's income was during the Roaring '20s leading up to the Great Depression. And as we led up to the Great Depression, the U.S. The distribution of income was getting even larger at that point, and we're seeing this happen today. It is the same exact thing. And I went through more of a detailed, and I created a table and compared what was happening during the Great Depression and during this economic time. So if you want, you can just search on the x22report.com site, episode 6. It will bring you to it. Scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the table, or if you want to listen to my report, you can listen to it, and you can see the comparisons. And if you look at episode 7, 8, 9, you can see each time I made a different part to the series that I was doing, and you can see the differences and the similarities of what is happening. And there's a lot more similarities than there are differences. Now, we know that the NSA is spying really all over the world. They're keeping an eye on everyone. They're blackmailing people, and now schools want to move this into their arena and spy on students and monitor their Facebook or social, whatever social sites they are on. And they're saying that they want to do this to catch people who are breaking the law, who are bullying or doing other harmful activities. And most of the parents are completely against this, and they worry that the move is yet another example of Big Brother prying into ordinary Americans' lives. And I hate to say this, but I agree. I have children. Right now I do not permit them on Facebook or any other social media, even though they continue to argue with me to let me go on these type of sites. And I don't believe, and I don't think, and I know for a fact that it's no one's business what you do. And you can compare, and if people are confused about the situation, let me bring it into basic and simpler terms. Because when people hear computer and technology and things like that, people, I don't know why, it just gets off into some other realm. If you are with a group of friends and you are in your home, and you are talking about all different subjects, about different people, would you want someone monitoring your conversation? This is the exact same thing that is on social media. No, you do not want someone with you. It is none of anyone's business what you talk about privately. If you are on a social media site and you have your permission and you have your security set to only your family and your close friends, it is no one's business to monitor, and even if you don't, it's still no one's business to monitor what you're doing on your site. Corporations have no authority. They have no business being there. It's almost like you are sitting in your living room talking to a bunch of friends and people wanting a recording of what you talked about in that session of just friend talk. And it's no one's business. Okay, let's move on here. Now, the EU is considering deploying battle groups. And the European Union, they're looking to have EU's rapid response forces. And what are they going to be used for? Well, the EU battle groups are military units that support the EU common security and defense policy. Member states contribute personnel and resources to the units, which comprise about 1,500 troops on a rotating 6-month basis. And they're proposing to use EU battle groups in a more flexible way by using, for instance, only some part of the group in line with a crisis scenario. Now, this kind of reminds me of a DHS type of group or a group outside of the military, and it looks like they are building it and strengthening it. And this plan of battle groups was a strategy, and it was developed 10 years ago, and they're starting to implement this now, and they want them to take on more responsibility. Now, the U.S. is urged to deploy missile defense systems to protect forces from Syrian strike. The United States has been urged to deploy advanced ballistic missile defense systems ahead of any type of air campaign against Syria. And I will get into Obama's speech and what I think about it and what I think is going to happen. And but right now, America is starting to build a missile defense system in southern Romania, and work on this U.S. missile defense system at a military base in Romania is going to start in October, and it's going to allow America to have the ability to protect Europe and have the U.S. Protect against ballistic missile launches from the Middle East, and it will protect the region from any type of attack. So to me, again, it seems like they are moving military assets to different regions, building bases, moving into the Philippines. They're using they're encircling China at this point, and they're already having military assets in the Mediterranean, as we know, and they are not backing down at this point, even though they're having discussions with Russia and Syria about removing the chemical weapons and putting them under international control. The UN came out today saying that there is no proof of chemical weapons, and they have listed a wide range of war crimes that both sides have done. And on the evidence currently available, it was not possible to reach a finding about the chemical agents used, their delivery systems, or the perpetrators. The team probing human rights violations in Syria said its latest report on Wednesday. And right now, they're not even showing that chemical weapons were used. Now, the central bankers, the U.S., Israel, they're all starting the propaganda up again that Iran nuclear moves are now troubling. Now, we have to remember that the central bankers, U.S. government, Israel, have been trying to get into Iran for the last 25 years. They continue to say that Iran is on the cusp of creating this nuclear bomb, and they're 3 to 5 years out. Well, this has been for 25 years that they're 3 to 5 years out, and they have not created anything or fired a nuclear weapon at anyone. By the way, Iran has not attacked anyone in over or started a war in over 200 years. And again, for those people out there, I am on nobody's side. I'm just trying to look at all the facts, bring them to you, and you can make your own decision on what's going on. I know what I think, but I'm just trying to show you different angles, different understandings of what is happening in the world. Now, this also goes on to say that Iran says it is enriching uranium only for civilian energy and medicine. The West suspects the program is covertly oriented towards developing the capability to make a nuclear weapon. And they said that, they're constructing this new reactor, and all of these issues are very, very troubling developments at this time, and they need to inspect what is going on, and people should start to be worried about Iran's nuclear capabilities. Now, moving on to President Obama's address that he did last night, he went on to say that, the people of Syria were on the floor, hospital, and dying after what appears to be a chemical attack. The president said that when dictators commit atrocities, they count on the world to look away. And he kept on going on and on and on. The Assad government gassed to death over 1,000 people, and including children. And no one disputes that chemical weapons were used in Syria. And he went on to say that we know that Assad regime was responsible, but he gave absolutely no evidence. This was all hearsay. He wasn't citing anything, and there was no real evidence to claim. And especially now that the UN came out with their findings, there is no evidence from UN at all either. And then he went on to say there's going to be no boots on the ground. It's going to be a strategic limited strike. But again, does anyone really understand if that's all it's going to be? The U.S. was supposed to be removing people from Afghanistan. The military is still there. The reason why it's still there is because Afghanistan has the largest copper deposit, natural resources, and they grow poppies to make opium to sell on the drug market. The U.S. forces are never leaving. Iraq will always be controlled by the United States to sell the oil using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. Plus, they have controlled Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Lebanon, Libya, Yemen by force, Egypt, all by force, by staging uprisings to overthrow the existing government, to put these countries back on the U.S. dollar, using it as the reserve currency, setting up private Western central banks to make loans out with interest, and also to capture the natural resources of each and every one of these countries, and to maintain control and continually to prop up the U.S. dollar. The last two nations are Syria and Iran, and they've been trying to get into these countries for a very long time, and they realize they are reaching the end game where this U.S. dollar fiat system is about to implode, and they need to prop it up a little bit longer and control these resources and start a war to cover up the entire implosion of what is happening here in the U.S. And this way they can blame it on another country. They can blame it on the country and say it was their fault that this is happening. People are going hungry because of what happened in this country, because they, were at war or they attacked us. Anything to get the blame off of them. There were a couple other things that Obama said in his speech, that he possessed the authority to order a military strike, but he wanted to give the vote up to Congress. Well, I'm sorry, under the Constitution, Congress is the only body that has the ability to order a strike. And I hate to say this, I know he said he was the commander-in-chief. He does not become the commander-in-chief until we are at war, and Congress allows and gives him the privilege of becoming commander-in-chief. And right now, he is not that. He also said Syria's use of chemical weapons is a danger to our security, but if you listen closely, he also acknowledged that the Assad regime does not have the ability to seriously threaten our military. Well, that's kind of contradictory, isn't it? If they're a danger to our security, but they don't have the ability to seriously threaten the military, how are they a danger then? They're not. They're not a danger, and he knows it. The only reason they need to get in there is to put that country on the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency, and once they get in there, they have the ability to go into Iran, because Iran and Syria have a treaty with each other that Iran would help out during this conflict. The only problem is that Russia and China back Syria, and this has been the major problem. And you have to remember, they've been trying everything to get Russia out of the way. Saudi Arabia bribed Putin. Putin didn't go for it. Saudi Arabia said, listen, we'll give you oil, we'll give you this, we'll give you money, we'll give you anything you need if you just step aside and let, the U.S. get in there and overthrow Assad. Putin said no. They made this big terrorist thing saying that, if Al-Qaeda gets into Syria and replaces the government before the U.S., there could be really big problems. So what they do, I think it was the next day, they tried to assassinate Assad to see if that would work and put Al-Qaeda in there, which would enable, under the, I think it was the Terrorist Act or one of these acts, it would enable them to go in and capture the government. That failed. They tried paying mercenaries for the last 2 years to overthrow Assad. Well, they have been losing the battle and kept being pushed back. They trained other paid mercenaries in Jordan for months and had them march towards Syria on August 17th, 4 days before the chemical attack. Assad got wind of this and crushed them. That's why the limited strike was completely put to rest and a whole new plan was created. So they've been trying everything and anything to get this started. And I'm going to tell you right now, they are not going to stop. And Russia understands this. They are trying to make peace. They are trying to give them a plan. And Russia has the I'm going to try to pronounce it, Moskva missile cruiser. It's entering the area, and it's supposed to be in the region on September 17th, and 2 other ships are arriving in the Middle East. And you can see that Russia has many ships and a submarine and a landing ship. China has their ships coming in, and the U.S. has their ships all sitting in the Mediterranean. And there was a report that someone from the U.S. Navy said, we aren't going anywhere. And President Obama, during his speech, I just want to mention this, wouldn't you think if they really wanted peace, and the whole issue is about these chemical weapons, I would expect the president to say, we will do everything in our power to make this work, to make Assad give up his chemical weapons. The United States will work around the clock to make this happen so we do not put our women and children in another war. We will not. This is my first priority, not to have war. That That is the last thing that we would want to do. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make this work, to have the international control from other nations control the chemical weapons, have them destroyed, and make it work. But instead, France put out their proposal, their draft resolution, wanting Assad to admit that he used chemical weapons. Who gives a crap at this point if he did or did? The UN saying that chemical weapons weren't even used. If they truly want peace and they want this to work, they would go forward and make this deal work. But the president seems stuck on still working out this type of strike. He's kept on saying that it's not going to be like Afghanistan. It's not going to be like Iraq. It's not going to be boots on the ground. It's going to be a strike. We're going to strike, 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 strike. And he kept going with that instead of saying we're going to make this resolution work with Russia and Syria. This shows me they are not looking for peace. This is a road bump. This was maneuverability so Congress would not have to vote on this. They are going to plan something else and something else soon. I know there are people that think that this is over. This is no way over. Now, Russia has formally handed over the plan, establishing international control of chemical weapons in Syria. They handed it to the United States, and the U.S. State Department called the Russian plan ideas rather than a lengthy package. So already there's a problem. But don't worry, Kerry is going to meet with and consult with Kissinger, who dealt with the Russians during the Cold War, and he's going to get coached on how to handle this situation when he goes and meets with the Russian delegates on Thursday. So don't worry about that. He's getting coached on how to handle this entire situation from Henry Kissinger, who wants a new world order. Now, as of right now, there is a report saying that anonymous hacktivists are bringing down Israeli websites right now, and they are launching major cyber attacks on Israeli businesses. And this is saying that many of the sites are down, and they stole a lot of people's identities during this time on 9/11. Now, today, a former DHS official warns of potential cyber attack. Stuart Baker told the Senate this Wednesday that the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee that the U.S. could be at increased risk of a cyber attack if it intervenes militarily in Syria. And if the president does choose to take some type of action and strike Syria, the Assad regime, along with the Syrian Electronic Army, could have potential consequences and attack the U.S. With cyber attacks. And Representative Mike Rogers, who created CISPA, by the way, chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, said Iran also has stepped up their cyber attacks on the U.S. because of tightening of the tightening economic sanctions, and now he is saying that we will have to up our game both physically and virtually. Listen, everyone. We know things are going to happen. We saw on today that the Million Muslim March really didn't turn out to be anything. The DC bikers, there was a huge amount of people showing up for that. And there are still things happening from now until early winter. We need to be prepared. We have a lot of potential false flags. Again, I'm reporting on things that might happen so we understand when they do happen that these were planned. So that's why I call them potential. I'm not saying these are carved in stone and definitely going to happen. I'm not making predictions. I'm using things that are going around and what people are saying, what news agencies are saying, and putting it all together so we have an understanding and a picture of what's happening. But I do believe that something major is going to happen from now to early winter, and there could be more than one thing that is going to happen. Listen, everyone, be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.